All right, hello everybody. It's Pastor Matt here for our children's praise video this morning. We're going to look at a passage here in Romans 3, and it's going to have to do with how we get into heaven. This is a topic to think about when we talk about going to heaven. Oftentimes people talk about heaven being a place up there in the sky where we go. It's really not actually that simple. Maybe you could talk about that with your teachers today. What it means to go to heaven, what is heaven, where is it, how are we going to find it. The one place we know is Jesus, who says in John 14 that he is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. So he's the way to heaven. The way isn't like a path or a highway or a tunnel. He's the way to heaven. He's the truth. It's the only real way we're going to get there, to heaven, which is a place, a happy place to be very close to God, closer to God than we are right now, in a relationship way. That's how we define heaven. And he's the life. That's what life is, to have life with God. That's heaven. The way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father. No one gets to come that close to God except without Jesus. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So I want to look at a verse and show you what it might mean as far as you can understand it today. This is a really important verse. I'm thinking we might have looked at it weeks ago, but I want to look at it again and try to put a different perspective on it. So I want you to really pay attention. We're going to talk about Romans 3:23. Romans 3:23 says this: For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified by his grace as a gift. That's it. That's the only verse I want to look at. We're going to read it again. I want you to try to hear me. And there's going to be words in here you probably don't know what they mean. We're going to walk it out and look at it. I want to read it really loudly and really slowly so you get it one more time. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified by his grace as a gift. Right? So for all have sinned and fall short. We know what sin is. You might know what sin is. Sin is anything that's not good as God defines what good is. If you do anything, if you think anything, say anything, or do anything with your body, your hands or your feet, that is not good. And what is good? God gets to define what good is. If it's not good according to God's definition of what good is, that's what we call sin. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Falling is like when you trip over your feet or you fall on the ground. God's way up there, and he's very good and perfect, and we can never get up there. We're not good enough, right, because of our sin. We fall short of the glory of God. So glory is like basketball. When you shoot a basketball shot and it goes right into the net, and everyone claps, right, and they're clapping for you because that was an amazing shot, and no one could have made that shot the way you did right then at that time, and it makes you feel really good inside, and everything's perfect. That's glory. Glory is just that awesome feeling, that good thing of everything the way it should be. We've fallen short of that, God's glory, God's goodness. And so that's our problem. That's what we call sin. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. But the solution is, and this is where I want to really understand this today, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified by his grace as a gift. That's the word I want to stop on. Justified. That's a word you don't use every day. You might not know what that word means. Justified means that everything is perfectly right. But the way you get justified, the way you get to be made right, the idea of like getting the basketball in perfectly, if you get the basketball in the hoop perfectly, that's called being justified. And what results from that is everyone clapping, and that's called glory, right? Maybe you have a favorite sports person who has their name on the back of their shirt. They're glorifying themselves. That's because they're making their name known because they're so good at a certain sport. We know right now with the Penguins, and there's a Sidney Crosby, and people will be walking around wearing a Crosby jersey, and it will say Crosby on the back. That's for the glory of Crosby because it's actually mentioning his name, and his name's all over the city of Pittsburgh because people are talking about him or wearing his shirts. But the reason he's getting so much glory is because he's so good at shooting a hockey puck and it gets inside the hockey net. And that's called righteousness or being justified. That's called getting it right. And if he gets it right so many times, Eventually, people start saying he's a really good hockey player and he gets a lot of fame, and that's called glory, right? So we don't have any of that in our life when we relate to God because we never get it right and we don't get any glory. But the reason we can have hope is the reality that this justified or being made righteous is his grace as a gift. It's given to us by his grace as a gift. So I have a picture here I want to show you. Maybe you've seen one of these. What is this? Go ahead and shout it out. Do you know what this is? This is a ticket, right? It's a very large version of what would be usually a very small little ticket. Maybe you went to a monster truck rally or a sporting event like a high school football game. Usually you see these kind of tickets at like smaller events. And then if you go to like a Penguins game or a Steeler game, they usually have longer tickets that you have to rip the edge off of because people try to make fake versions of them. But the ticket, and it says admit one. So if you give this ticket, right, to somebody, it gets you in the door to go watch your favorite sporting event, let's say. One time, someone gave me free tickets to a Steeler game. And so I didn't pay anything for these tickets, but they gave me this ticket, and I gave it to the person at the counter, and I got to walk into this really big Heinz Field, the stadium there in downtown Pittsburgh. And I didn't have to pay anything for it, right? That's what we're talking about. This being justified, being able to get into the game, or being able to get inside a really big walled building, you can't do it without a ticket. That's what Jesus said is like heaven. You have to have your ticket so you can get into heaven. And the only way we do that is through Jesus. He's our ticket to heaven. That's why he says he's the way, the truth, and the life. So I want you to see this ticket here. Admittance to one, right? It means one person gets to get in. And it says eternal life and John 3:16, right? John 3:16. And in the middle it says paid for by Jesus. So I want you to look at this ticket and see if it makes sense to you. Paid for by Jesus, John 3:16, eternal life. That's what we call heaven. Jesus is the way, truth, and the life. Now I want you to know somebody has to tell me what John 3:16 says. If you know what it is, I want you to even shout it out right now in the middle of this video. Maybe someone can quote it. And if you can't, maybe we can learn that one again today, because I know we covered that one. How does this make sense that John 3:16 would be the ticket or the way to heaven? So that's our discussion for today. Talk about that with your teachers. What does it mean when we say Jesus is our ticket to heaven? And you need to know personally for yourself, is Jesus your ticket to heaven? Do you get to know God through Jesus, and how? What does it mean to be justified? That's a word we should just learn. Even if you're really little, what does it mean to be justified? And what does glory mean? If you can start to understand what these words mean, you're going to get it. You're going to get to know Jesus and understand the real gospel. So your teachers are going to help you with that today, and I will see you again next week.